Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. In the name of Almighty God, Universal God, Immaterial Deity. Last time I made an audio visual, I made a short video regarding the debate which took place on 20th December 2025. This debate created a chaos, a kind of unrest, not only on social media platforms but across electronic media. As a result, even those unfamiliar with the very ABC of philosophy have begun engaging in metaphysical debates and discussions. Such debates under these conditions, under these circumstances, in my opinion, rarely remain fruitful. Though I'm not interested in making videos, I'm not interested in making audio visuals. I'm not particularly interested. I don't have any interest in such things, but a few friends encouraged me to explore this topic. Nor do I claim to be a great scholar or an intellectual. I'm simply a student of philosophy, literature, history, and religion as well. Trying to study and understand things under the guidance of my teacher to the best of my knowledge and to the best of my ability. Today I will try to shed some more light on the same topic, atheism versus religion, atheism versus God's existence and revelation, in a very short period of time. A talk and audiovisual may be brief, but it still should be meaningful. It still should be meaningful. Some meaningful lines carries a deep meaning and a moral responsibility. A piece of knowledge can benefit humanity by reducing ignorance and encouraging ethical conduct and moral values. There is a misconception to regard atheism as a purely modern phenomena. In reality, skepticism regarding God, regarding revelation, regarding prophethood has accompanied human intellectual history in every age, albeit always as a minority position. What distinguishes modern atheism, in my opinion, from my point of view, is not its novelty, but the language it employs, particularly through vocabulary of philosophy and modern science, which lends its arguments an appearance of greater force. Atheism is not a recent development in human thought. History bears witness to various forms of denial and skepticism. In Greek philosophy, when we study history of Western philosophy, we find certain thinkers emphasized material causes over divine agency, over transcendental agency, over spiritual agency. In Indian intellectual tradition itself, the Karavaka school of thought rejected metaphysical realities altogether. In pre-Islamic Arabia, even during the period of Prophet Muhammad, blessings be upon him, individuals existed who denied God, who denied revelation, prophethood, divine agency. Quran explicitly refers to such people. Quran explicitly refers to such elements. You open the Quran and you reach to the Surah Jasiyah. There you will find a verse. They say there is nothing but our worldly life. We die and we live. Nothing destroys us except the time. وَقَالُوا مَا هِيَ إِلَّا حَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا. Ma is a negation, harf nafi. Illa is a harf istishna. وَقَالُوا مَا هِيَ इल्ला हयातु दुनिया नमूतु व नहया वमा युहलिकु इल्ला दहर, यानी हमें गर्दिश ज़माना मारती है, इसीलिए इन्हें दहरिया भी कहते हैं। कुरान कहता है वमा लहुम बिज़ालिका मिन इल्म इनहुम इल्ला यज़ुन्नून, दे आर assuming, दे आर conjecturing, they have not of that knowledge, उनके पास वो इल्म नहीं है। So despite their presence, atheism never became a dominant worldview, nor did the Quran elevate it into a central polemical concern. What was the prophetic approach? What was the prophetic method? The prophetic approach was not centered on engaging every skeptic and denier into philosophical debate. Instead, Quran establishes a principle of intellectual discernment. Quran states it. So turn away from those who turn away from our remembrance. They desire nothing but the life of this world. But the life of this world. Recognizing so this deliberate disengagement reflects wisdom rather than weakness, recognizing that not every intellectual posture merits polemical engagement. The prophets never treated, when we study seerah, when we study history, the prophets, when we study literature, we find the prophets never treated atheism as a central issue. Nor did they invite every skeptic or denier to formal debate. Their primary method was moral example, wisdom-based invitation, and practical demonstration of truth, rather than continuous polemical engagement. Also, I think discussion, it's not a wrestling arena, and it should not be a wrestling arena in which two opponents exhaust their efforts merely to defeat one another. The aim of a believer is not to win arguments, but to uphold moral integrity and to win arguments. Quranic approach does not reduce dialogue, with non-believers to confrontation. Rather, it calls to engage with wisdom and ethical seriousness. So, intellectual engagement, therefore, should remain a means of moral invitation, not an exercise in polemical victory. Quran addresses spiritual realities, moral values, existential responsibility, ethical awareness. We find when we read Quran, when we study Quran, we find disbelief inside prophetic households. They rejected prophetic truth, not relative truth. They rejected prophetic truth. I mean to say absolute truth, moral responsibility, divine authority. This shows that denial prophethood and God's existence often manifests as a rejection of guidance, not denial of existence. So Quran ignores atheism because atheism is, I think, historically marginal in Quranic text and psychologically secondary. So Quran states that human beings already know God at the level of fitra. So Quran shows little interest in atheism, little interest in its theoretical position. One more thing, there's an error. There's an error in atheistic discourse lies in attempting to evaluate God's existence through the criteria of empirical sciences. The science concerns itself with measurable, observable, and repeatable phenomena, whereas the question of God is inherently non-physical, metaphysical. Question of revelation, question of prophethood, question of soul, question of afterlife is inherently non-physical. So we cannot theorize such things. We cannot theorize soul. Quran articulates this distinction succinctly. Vision does not encompass him, and he encompasses all vision. La tudrikuhul absar. Quran states it. very clearly. La tudrikul absar wa huwa yudrikul absar. So I think for this reason, continuous debates over God's existence often proves fruitless. God neither can be empirically proven nor empirically disproven. Consequently, Quran does not insist on perpetual argumentation. Rather, but it directs attention towards ethical awareness and existential responsibility. We study. There are in past there were great scholars and towering intellectuals who did not engage in public spectacle and noisy debates. Instead, they devoted themselves to the constructive work. They authored enduring masterpieces in favor of God, in favor of God's existence, in favor of soul, in favor of afterlife, in favor of revelation, in favor of prophethood. Across Shia and Sunni tradition, even in Christian community as well. This legacy reminds us that lasting ideas are built through depth, through positive effort, through scholarship, not in momentary controversy. Not in momentary controversy. It would be dishonesty if I did not mention the great philosophers and scientists of Christian community. We have many living examples like great philosopher Professor William Lane Craig, Professor Alvin Plantinga, Professor Stephen Meyer, great scientist Dr. James Tour, nanotechnologist, chemist. They produces a lot through philosophy, through science, in favor of theism. So we should concentrate. We ought to work for the building of society, for moral values. There is a saying in which Prophet Muhammad, blessings be upon him, says, وَإِسْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, यानी मुझे इसलिए भेजा गया है कि मैं बेहतरीन किस्म के अखलाक को पाए तकमील तक पहुंचा दूं. I have been sent to moral excellence, to its completion. وَإِسْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. So we should concentrate on moral values. We ought to work for building of society. Now, hopefully, I'm going to continue this series. This time, I would like to conclude my talk here with 3 to 4 beautiful couplets. One addressed for those who turn knowledge into public spectacle and polemics, and one for and 2 to 3 for atheists. Iqbal says, खिरदमंदू से क्या पूछूं कि मेरी इब्तिदा क्या है, मैं तो इस फिक्र में रहता हूं कि मेरी इंतहा क्या है. These were addressed for atheists. And one more beautiful couplet. Probably this is in Zarb Kalim. अगर कजरो है अंजुम, आसमां तेरा है कि मेरा, मुझे फिक्र जहां क्यों हो, जहां तेरा है कि मेरा. तो इकबाल यहाँ पर यानी इंसान से ये कहते हैं कि अपनी हद में रहने के लिए यानी ये सवाल उठाते हैं. यानी it means we human beings have been given very limited knowledge. वमा ऊतीतु मिनल इल्म इल्ला कलीला, iota of totality, fraction of reality of totality. We human beings have given very limited knowledge. And one more for those who turned knowledge into public spectacle and polemics. This beautiful couplet of Jigar Muradabadi. अपनी हद से न बढ़े कोई इश्क में, जो जर्रा जिस जगह है वही आफताब है. वसलाम.